Hey guys, so we are going to talk about respiration. Finally, how do we harvest kinetic energy from that potential energy of the glucose? So we'll talk about it, and there are a lot of slides, and so on the PowerPoint. So I don't want to just go over them. You can go over them yourself. I want to show you what should you know, what is important to know, because there's a lot of information, and it's all kind of important to be exposed to. But what should you know? What is important in glycolysis? And that's going to be the same than for all of these processes: glycolysis, intermediary steps, Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain. I'm going to go over them and I'm going to show you exactly what I want you to know from them. All of them, you need to know the net input and output. If you know that, you will be able to reform your like walk through the steps. You may not know all the steps exactly, but you will be able to just understand what's happening and why it is happening, right? So the net input of glycolysis is glucose, a molecule of glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule, kind of. It has more than that, right? But if you think of the drawing, it has 6 circles, black circles. But if you remember it's a 6-carbon molecule, it helps because in output you get 2 pyruvate, and the pyruvate is a 3-carbon molecule. See, you go from 6 to 3. You didn't lose any of the backbone carbons. You lost other stuff in the process. The input here has also, importantly, the molecule that are going to be oxidized in the process. So you start with the NAD plus, 2 of them, and the 2 ADP. That's just how things are. That's your input. And the output is the 2 NADH and the 2 ATP. Those are net, right? So it's net input and output. We know that we're going to input 2 ATP and get 4 out. That's why we get 2 out at the end, right? And now you can look at, if you actually want to learn something, you could focus on the output only. Because if you know 2 pyruvate, you can know that you have 3 carbons times 2, 6 carbons. Oh, I got 1 glucose. 2 NADP, NADH. Oh, I should have 2 NAD plus 2 H plus, right? That's what's going to happen. Yes. And then 2 ATP. Oh, I need 2 ADP plus 2 phosphate group. And here you go. So if you focus only on learning the output, you actually learn it all, right? So now let us go through the steps, and not one by one, but showing what's important. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to go through all the steps, but I want us to know what's mostly important. So you start with a glucose molecule, right there. And that glucose molecule has 6 carbon, right? And the things you want to think about, you don't need to learn all those terms. You can look up, I got the glycolysis, I think of a Krebs cycle, maybe students has made all the molecules with all the links and carbons and all. Feel free to do that if you want. It's more chemistry level. But what I want you to know is really what's happening, the great strokes. So I'm not going to want you to remember glucose 6-phosphate, for example. That's the next step here. Although if you want to know, and you could, it can help you to understand that 6 means where, which carbon, the last one, and phosphates means what. So what you end up going for the first reaction of glycolysis is adding on your 6 carbons, you add a phosphate on the last one. That's called phosphorylation. We talked about it in a previous video. The phosphorylation activates, gives some energy, and that's where the 2 ATP that we input, that's not in part of the net input, but the input has 2 ATP. The first one is there. The second one is when you add a phosphor on the other phosphate, on the other side. So you do 2 phosphorylation. That's why at that stage, we call it fructose 1,6 diphosphate, and the thing is 1,6 because it's the first and the 6th phosphate. Fructose is because in between we actually rearrange after the phosphorylation, we rearrange the glucose into a fructose molecule. It's just a different ring. Not important, but you need to know that here in the process you need 2 ATP. That's what's happening here. And then the next thing you need to understand is you break those two apart and you make pyruvate. And pyruvate, although it's not pyruvate directly, right? That's the end of the process would be to make pyruvate. So you go, and I say pyruvate because that's in our output, but you start with what we call a pGal molecule, right? And that's the one you want, the pGal here. It's just on the other side, you don't really have pGal, and it's just a matter of confirmation. You don't need to know exactly, but just remember that there will be a rearrangement here before you get to a pGal. And now, just seeing that helps you understand why you get two molecules out of one glucose. So if you want to calculate every time, if you put one glucose in, you get twice as much of the output, which will be pyruvate at the end of the day, right? So now that we are with a pGal, we're going to start from there and see what's happening. So we start with our pGal here, and our pGal is literally a 3-carbon molecule, right? We're going to take the one on the left, so the one that has the phosphate group on the phosphate group on the left, and so that molecule of pGal is already phosphorylized, right? Has some potential energy. What's going to happen, the first step, is to add more phosphates, to activate it again. And I'm only going to go through one pGal molecule, so I'm not going to repeat everything twice, right? So imagine that happens to the other one. When you do that, you literally need energy to put the phosphate in there, right? And that energy can come from different ways and different processes. But one good way to do that is to combine that with another reaction, which is the oxidation. So in the same process, you go and make, at the same time, you take NAD plus H plus, and you get NADH. And we also have in the process electrons that are attached to that NADH. So it's usually symbolized with those two dots on top of a molecule name. So that's how the first step works. Now that you have that 2-phosphate thing, it's time to get some energy out. Although the most important part of glycolysis is to produce those electron carrier, those oxidated molecules, because that's what's going to be used in the electron transport chain at the end of the day, at the end of the respiration. There is also a reason why we have phosphorylized all those molecules so long to get those phosphates, because we can then harvest them. And so that's going to be harvested twice. The first time, the phosphate, and the second time as well, will just be harvested into an ATP molecule. So now, at the end of the day, you're going to have, and see how I skip steps, right? At the end of the day, you're going to have your pyruvate with 2 ATP. So you just took those phosphates out. You don't really need to know the intermediary step. You can learn them if you really want to, but that's really what I want you to focus on. You get your pGal, you phosphorylize it, and at the same time you create your oxidized NAD plus to get NADH, which is extremely important for ATP production down the line. Way more important than those ATP, but the cool thing about those ATP is it's kind of free, so why not take it? Now you have 2 for 1 molecule of pGal. Since you have 2 molecules of pGal, because you split that carbon in half, right? 6, so 3 and 3, you're going to have 4 ATP. You inputted 2 early on to phosphorylize your glucose, and now you get 4 out, so that's why the net output is 2 ATP, right? And at the end of the day, after those, that's your pyruvate right here. And the pyruvate is the output of glycolysis. And so I just walk you through what I think you should know from glycolysis. So if you want to rewatch that video and focus on that, and you can draw that yourself, as I just did, without the help of any PowerPoint, that would be golden. That's how you know you learned it. Because if you just listen to me on the video, you're just like, oh yeah, I get it, I know what he's doing. Well, can you do it on your own with a piece of paper and a blank piece of paper and no help? Because then you will have learned it. So do it. Draw yourself on a piece of paper, on the whiteboard, and do it again and again until you get it. Remember, the principle is take a blank piece of paper, draw as much as you can of glycolysis, stop after 2-3 minutes, check your PowerPoint for a solution, correct your mistakes, put it away for an hour, in an hour, do it again from a blank page, and you should improve every time you do that, and at each iteration until you can literally draw glycolysis while taking a breakfast, right? And that's all for now. I will see you in the next one. Take care.